Hey guys, and welcome back to Inspired by Jerica Richey. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the Zodiac Signs mini series where we have been journeying through the Zodiac Signs by polarity and progression. Today you will be watching the Gemini video. So thank you so much for clicking on my video. If you have the sun in Gemini or maybe the moon or ascendant, then this video may definitely speak to you. It may resonate with you. Or maybe you have a lot of planets in Gemini and so you resonate with this particular sign. And if you have ever wondered like why the signs do what they do, how they get their meanings, like why do we describe Gemini the way that we do? If that interests you, then this is definitely the video for you because that's exactly what we have been discussing throughout this mini series. So what's been going on is that for the past, the mini series is for 6 weeks, but we are on week 3. So for the past 2.5 weeks, give or take, we have been going through the signs by polarity. So I have been discussing 2 signs per week. So we kicked off with Aries and Libra in the first week. And then last week we did Taurus and Scorpio. And this week is Sagittarius and then Gemini. So if you are just getting into the series, welcome. I definitely recommend that you go back and listen to the other videos because it's sort of a build up, at least from a progression standpoint. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm glad to be here, guys. I have been having so many issues with my laptop lately, which is where I record from because it has the built-in camera. So it looks like I may have to get me a webcam because, oh my gosh, just issues, guys, issues. But anyway, so for those of you that have been watching the videos and you want to skip the quick introduction, definitely look in the description box down below. I will have timestamps there so that you can skip this part. But if this is your first video of this series that you have clicked on, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for this part, okay? And basically, I just like to point out that for me, I do prefer to study astrology from a traditional lens, okay? So what that means is that I'm only going to be acknowledging the 5 main planets of the moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, okay? And Saturn. And then, of course, the sun. So what I meant to say was the 5 planets plus the 2 luminaries, but I threw the moon in there and it got a little bit crazy. So the 5 planets, okay, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, plus the 2 luminaries, the sun and the moon, okay? So you're not going to hear me say much about Neptune, Uranus, or Pluto because those are modern rulers in modern astrology, okay? But in traditional astrology, we only give rulership to those main 7 altogether, okay? So let's go ahead and jump into a quick introduction to astrology. And these are just my personal views and how I look at astrology. So it's not canon or anything. I'm not saying that you have to believe this way, but I just kind of want to give you a heads up so you know where I'm coming from, okay? So astrology derives from the Greek word astro, meaning star, and logos, meaning language, knowledge, or information. Astrology is the language of the stars and or the knowledge that comes from the stars, okay? So when we're talking about astrology, the belief here is that the stars are signs of the times. They are the energies in which we are born into. And so it studies the correlation between the movement of the celestial bodies, which are the stars, the planets, and the terrestrial events on Earth. And so astrology actually operates under the universal law of correspondence. So if you are familiar with like the 7 Hermetic principles or any of the work by Thoth, or if you've read a book like the Kabbalion, then you have probably come across the axiom as above, so below, as within, so without. And that axiom stems from the universal law of correspondence. And so the idea is that the universe is this big whole system, or the macrocosm, and within that whole system you have the microcosm. So even though it's micro, or these lesser worlds, they are still complete nonetheless. However, the micro mirrors the macro, and so essentially what happens on earth is what happens in heaven, and vice versa, and if you grew up with a religious background, you probably know where that stems from. Okay, so a quick introduction to the signs. So zodiac derives from the Greek word zodiakos, meaning circle or a little circle of animals. And the signs are actually birthed from a combination of interactions between the four elements, which produce the four seasons, and then the modalities in which they operate. So we know there are four seasons, and depending on where you live in the world, each season will have a beginning, middle, and a transition period. Okay. And if you're in the Northern Hemisphere or in the US, like I am, typically we do get to experience the four distinct seasons. Okay. And so the beginning of a season, the middle of a season, and the transition of a season is what we call in astrology the modalities. Okay. So when you take the four seasons times the three modalities, 4 times 3 is 12. That is how you get 12 astrological signs. And contrary to popular belief, the signs are not the stars of the show. And that is another thing that is associated, or another belief that is associated with traditional astrology, is understanding that the signs add color and flavor to the mode of expression for the planets. But without the planets, there's really nothing to describe. Okay, so the planets are most important, and then the signs in which they inhabit become a mode of expression and a way for them to express themselves. So the idea here is that a planet is gonna planet. My astrology teacher says that all the time. A planet is gonna planet, okay? So regardless of what sign a planet may be in, the significations of the planet still stay the same. The moon is gonna be the moon regardless of which of the 12 zodiac signs she resides in. However, her expression is what would be changeable. Okay, so not her significations as the moon. However, her expression of those significations can vary depending on the zodiac sign that she falls in. So I hope that makes sense. We will be interpreting these signs based on what I call the big four. Okay, and the big four would be the gender of the sign. Okay, so is it masculine, feminine, or yin or yang, or diurnal or nocturnal? We're also going to consider the element of the sign. So is it a fire, water, earth, or air sign? We're also going to consider the modality. So as we talked about with the seasons, is it the beginning, middle, or transition? And then last, we are going to consider the planetary ruler for the sign. All right, so if everybody's on board, let's continue and jump into the sign of Gemini. So not last week, earlier this week, I released the video for Sagittarius. And so Sagittarius and Gemini are the first mutable signs that we have touched in the series so far, which is really exciting. So as I mentioned, you will see the big four located on the left side of the screen. And we can see that Gemini is a yang, masculine, or diurnal sign. Okay, so that means that Gemini energy is going to have an expressive and a direct and an external way of behaving. Okay, it will be expansive, and as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, when it comes to gender being expressive versus repressive, or yin versus yang, masculine versus feminine, we have to remember that with the yang signs, they go outward, okay? Whereas the yin signs tend to go inward. So Gemini is going to be a sign that is influenced by that, which makes Gemini very external in how it likes to express itself. Gemini is also an air sign, okay? And we learned in the Libra video about both yang and air. So definitely check out the Libra video as well. But anyway, air is active. It is of the hot and moist qualities. So air is very flexible. It fluctuates. It's very dynamic because of that hot quality. It's definitely dynamic, but it's more adaptable than, say, what a fire sign would be. Air tends to be a bit detached, and it's very restless because it doesn't have any bounds, which makes it very endless. You know, if you were to literally try to catch air in your hand, it's impossible. You know, it rises up and it expands out. And so it's everywhere. And we definitely see that reflected in the air signs, specifically with Gemini. Okay. As far as the modality, Gemini is a mutable sign, okay? So this is a sign of transition. We know that in the zodiac, the mutable signs are the ones that represent transitioning from one season into another season. So Gemini season is the transition coming out of Taurus, so that was the thick of spring, and then getting ready to get into summer for Cancer season. So Gemini is sandwiched in between Taurus and Cancer. Okay, so during this time of year, you're still going to have some of the essence of spring, but then you'll also have some feels of summer. And so this is a time where the temperatures, at least in the northern hemisphere, are going to feel, you know, cool on some days and then super duper hot on some other days. And that speaks to the flexibility and the fluctuation that mutability offers. So oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, you guys. I forgot to change on the screen where it says transition to, transition of a season. It should say spring, not autumn. I'm sorry. I left that on there from the Libra video. You guys, what did I tell y'all about copy and pasting? And then here I go, forgetting another thing. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry about that, you guys. So the transition of a season, it's coming out of spring, okay, not autumn. But everything else on here is correct, okay? So mutable energy can be very ambivalent. And ambivalence means that there are things that are seemingly contradictory that are existing in the same space. So it's like, you know, mutability can be this and that. And there is a tendency to fluctuate and vacillate between opposing things. And so it can vary. There's an adaptability to mutable energy. And it actually encompasses both cardinal energy, which we know is very self-starting in the beginning of things, and fixed energy, which we know can be very solid and stuck in the thick of things. And so mutable signs will have that ability to fluctuate between being very cardinal one moment and then being very fixed the next moment. And it is literally the alchemy of those two energies coming together that creates the mutability and just being able to do this and that. So then mutable energy tends to be a bit inconsistent, and that's because of the fluctuation. It wants that freedom to be able to go from one thing to the next thing. So the planetary ruler for Gemini is Mercury, okay? And Mercury, I want to say mythologically, Mercury is associated with Hermes, or Thoth. And it's known as the messenger of the gods. And as the messenger, it rules over messages, any kinds of messages, text messages, messages that you are communicating. So it governs all forms of communication. It governs things that have to be processed. It is the giving and receiving of information. Okay, so Mercury being actually the closest to the sun, it actually follows the sun, and it's only going to be so far from the sun. So wherever the sun is in your chart, so say for example, for me, I am a Pisces, so I have the sun in Pisces. That means that Mercury typically isn't going to get more than about one sign away from where the sun is. So for people who have the sun in Pisces, they're typically going to also have Mercury either in Aries, which is the sun after Pisces, which is the same sign, or Aquarius, which is the sign before it. So I like to think of Mercury as sort of like the sidekick, or like the king's hand, so if the sun is the king of the chart, then Mercury is like the hand. So if you guys watch, House of Dragons, then you know what I'm talking about, right? Like the hand to the king, the sidekick. And if you do watch House of Dragons, you can see that the hand, there is a trickster energy to the hand, because they're so close to the king. They know all the intimate details. And Mercury is definitely about details. It likes to analyze things and process things. And it's about being skillful. It's always learning something, right? So when it comes to Mercury, you have to be careful with that trickster energy, because what kind of damage could you do when you know a lot of information, right? Or it's like, because another form of communication is writing, then it's like the person who holds the pen writes the story, So when we think of history or his story, whoever holds the pen is basically holding the power to say what is and what isn't. And that's some powerful energy, the things that we speak, So communicating, speech is another word that is associated with Mercury. So yeah, Mercury definitely could be very trickster, if it wanted to be, and it can be a little bit unreliable in that way. And um essentially, Mercury is said to be, at least in traditional astrology, Mercury is said to be neither benefic or malefic, meaning neither inherently good or inherently challenging. And that really its behavior depends upon the planets and the environment, the environment that it's in, but the planets that it is close to. So if Mercury happens to be around other benefic planets, then it's going to behave more benefic or benevolent. Whereas if Mercury is around malefic planets, it may behave a little bit more in a maleficent kind of way. And so there's like this shapeshifter energy to Mercury that allows it to just kind of be a chameleon and change with its environment. And depending on the intentions behind that, or depending on the circumstance, hey, That could be a good or a bad thing, I think. So yeah, so Mercury, I think I did all the Mercury keywords there. Oh, transportation. Yes. So Mercury rules over transportation as well. And that includes technology. So we're talking about communicating. Technology is based in communicating, especially we're talking about our computers. And when you think to compute something or communication, so it's about gathering information and then sharing information. And we can definitely see that influence of Mercury on the sign of Gemini. So when we merge all of the interpretations that we derived from the big four, so we're talking about the gender being yang, the element of air, the modality, which is mutable, and then the influence of its planetary ruler, Mercury, that is how we are going to get the true essence of Gemini energy and what Gemini can look like in our charts and how it influences us. So then we're talking about the essence of Gemini. Gemini is then a energy that is very curious, intelligent, inventive, talkative. So Gemini has a lot to share. It has a lot to talk about because it processes a lot of information. It takes in a lot of information. Having that influence from Mercury plus being an air sign, it's all over the place. So it can be mentally restless. The mind never rests with a air sign, and specifically more so with Gemini. Gemini is going to be a very social sign. Again, that's communicating. It's going to be very flexible with that mutability. So it could be this or that. And Gemini probably changes its mind a lot. So what it may have agreed to yesterday, don't count on it because it's probably going to change its mind by tomorrow, if not by the end of the same day. Okay. Gemini is said to be very youthful and playful type of energy. It definitely gives you like childhood Peter Pan type vibes, right? Like just kind of never wanting to grow up. So for some people may feel like Gemini is very immature in that way because it's so youthful and it's so playful. And that's just that curious aspect to it. They are very childlike as far as being able to approach new things like a child with that curiosity and that awe that's just like, ooh, what's that? Or what's this? How does that work? Gemini, again, we talked about the deception that can come with Gemini as well. And depending on the person, that may or not be intentional, you guys. So, don't be hard. Don't be too hard on the Geminis out there. Some of the deception just honestly comes from them changing their mind. Even if they're in a relationship, it's like, yeah, I know I was feeling you, but then like now I'm not feeling you. That can happen with Gemini energy. And I think some people feel bamboozled or deceived by that. So Geminis definitely have to be careful with appearing to lead people on by not being effectively communicative with what you're truly feeling and what you have going on. So you got to be a little bit more direct, and the opposite sign of Sagittarius will help with that, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the polarity slide next. But that's where Gemini can fall a little bit short, is being a little bit indirect because it's a little bit scattered and all over the place with its thoughts. So sometimes, although it may be doing a lot of talking, it may not be what it's saying may not be of any substance, or it doesn't hold any weight to it. Okay. So Gemini is also very quick-witted. These are quick thinkers. They're always processing information, charming, They're social, okay? They know the things to say, and so they'll definitely charm the pants off of you. And changing. Now, when planets visit Gemini's domain, they're going to be a little bit more distracted, and that's that scattered energy that I mentioned. Again, it can almost have like a like a ADD, or ADHD kind of energy where it's just like, it's this, is that, and I don't mean that, like as a disrespectful. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, you guys. Okay, but it's. For lack of a better word, it can be sort of like that as far as like that distracting aspect to it. Again, that air influence is going to make Gemini energy a little bit detached. So that lack of commitment and just sort of just being unable to stick with one thing very long, because once it's had the experience, it's going to be ready to move on to the next thing. Planets in Gemini will be a little bit more social, a little bit more analytical, looking into the details of things, a little bit more rational, and that's that air influence. It's gonna want to think things out and to really process a situation and think about things before acting sometimes. And then, of course, the ambivalence. So planets in Gemini may seem to have two sides to them, and that's because they're being influenced by a mutable sign in air at that. So consider, you guys, where you have Gemini in your chart, because that's probably going to be an area that requires a lot more mental stimulation for you, or it may be a part of the chart that you feel is a little bit contradicting in some sort of way. So speaking of contradictions, okay, let's talk about the polarity sign for Gemini, which is Sagittarius. So when we're talking about polarities, okay, polarities are basically just two sides of the same coin. And that is why I wanted to address the zodiac from a polarity standpoint, okay? And the universal law of polarity tells us that things are actually identical in nature, but they just differ in degree. So you have two things that appear to be opposite or contradictory, but they're really not. So when it comes to Gemini and Sagittarius, where they are identical in nature is the fact that they both share the modality of mutability, and they both share the gender of yang or masculine or diurnal. Okay. So what they have in common is the fact that they're both going to be outwardly expressive. They're both going to be very curious signs. They're going to be energetic and very active signs. And they're going to be very what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to be a little bit prone to being social. Both of them are technically very social signs, even though they do have different planetary rulers. We know Gemini is ruled by Mercury, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. They both have this sociability, I think, in that social butterfly, almost like life of the party aspect to them. So where they're different, okay? So Mercury's influence versus Jupiter's influence. We know that Jupiter has a tendency to think big. Jupiter is big on beliefs and faiths. And so when we're talking about the sign of Sagittarius, we're talking about a sign that likes to go big or go home. They see the vision, they have the big picture, whereas on the opposite end of that, with Gemini and its ruling planet Mercury, they want to get into the nitty gritty. They want to get into the details of things. And so fire for Sagittarius, they're going to be bold in their beliefs. They're going to be bold in that big picture. And sometimes when we are too big picture and we don't look at the details, we can miss the fine print, you know? So how many times have you signed up for something, or you've had that Sagittarius fire energy to go after something, right? But then you get there and the experience may not be what you thought it was going to be, mainly because you lacked some information. There was a part that you didn't do, a part that you left off. Yeah, Sagittarius energy has a tendency to do that sometimes. And on the Gemini side, they're going to be a little bit more detached from the outcome, because whereas Sagittarius is going to have um, an investment because of the passion that they will feel when it comes to something, Gemini is going to feel a little bit more detached from the outcome. They're okay with starting over with things, or, oh, it didn't work out, oh, I'll go try something else. And that's that air influence. So Sagittarius, being a fire sign and being ruled by Jupiter, offers a freedom of expression and an inspiration to Gemini, giving Gemini something to kind of ground their beliefs a little bit, and to have some sort of passion, like an investment. I don't want to say emotional because it's not water, but to have some sort of investment spiritually in something, without just moving on to the next thing, without truly being present. And I think when you have a passion for something, you're able to really be in the moment, and really be present in that moment. And I think Sagittarius has a way of doing that, you know, as adventurous as it is. It really takes in with the experience. And that's the wisdom from Jupiter, where Sagittarius can really learn something because they're really soaking up all of the experience from it's like their soul is into it, you know, like, and that's what passion is, you know, it's like literally taking a piece of yourself and investing it into something that's outside of you. And Gemini isn't necessarily going to do that, you know? So Gemini is definitely going to offer the facts, you know, where Jupiter and Sagittarius may lack some of those facts because they're so enveloped in the passion that's behind their beliefs or how much faith they have in something. Gemini is going to be like, yeah, I know that feels, you know, and I don't want to say feel because that's such a watery word, but the feels as in being caught up in that, like spiritually, you know, just having that passion can really make a person blind to the reality or the more rational facts part of the thing. And Gemini is going to, you know, remind you of the facts. It's going to be like, yeah, I hear you with all of that, you know, and I know you was all passionate about it, but the fact of the matter is, and then fill in the blank, right? So that's definitely some differences between Sagittarius and Gemini. So let's get into where you may have Gemini in your chart, okay? So you've got a Gemini rising chart on the screen here. Guys, we already know about the glyphs, okay? We know that the glyphs are backwards. Y'all know how I be having to flip it, twist it, and reverse it, okay? To get this glyph to show properly to give you this Gemini rising chart, okay? But nevertheless, here it is. And so we will be going through each sign on the right side of the screen based on your rising sign, okay? So this is not, you know, for Aries. Don't look for, if you have the sun in Aries, this is for Aries rising, Taurus rising, Gemini rising, and so on, okay? So kicking off with the Aries rising, if you are Aries rising, you have Gemini energy on your third house, okay? And this is the house of information. your local environment, your daily rituals, the house of siblings and writing. And so this is a really nice place to have Gemini, because Gemini already has affinity with those sorts of topics. And so an Aries rising person may find that they like their daily rituals to switch up. They may not like to do the same schedule every single day when they get up in the morning. They may not like to drive the same way to work all the time. They may want to switch that up. They may like to communicate and write about different things and varying topics and have flexibility in that. Taurus rising, you're going to have Gemini energy on your second house of your resources, how you earn money, how you spend money, so your spending habits, and then the things that you find that are valuable to you. So for Taurus rising, you may be quite flexible with how you decide to make your living, so maybe you like a lot more flexibility and fluctuation with where you choose to invest your resources or how you choose to use your resources. You may want that flexibility to do it how you want to do it. For Gemini rising, this is your sign. So, of course, you're going to have Gemini energy on your first house. So you're going to feel this very personally, okay? You may really resonate with a lot of what I have said in regards to Gemini. So this is going to be reflected in your behavior, your vitality and health, and in your personality. Cancer rising, you will have Gemini energy on the 12th house of the unconscious, okay? This is the shadow self, the privacy of our psyche. And this is like the blind spot in our house of self-undoing. So for a Cancer rising, you may not resonate with a lot of Gemini energy, and that's because it's on a house that is in a blind spot for you. However, when you do get into a hermit mode, or you do spend some time meditating or getting into the deeper parts of the self or doing shadow work, that's where you're going to find this Gemini energy, and you're going to need to have some flexibility. You're going to need space to expand and to really be able to maneuver such a private area of your life. So be gentle with yourself, okay, Gemini on the 12th, and allow that curiosity when you are in a place of meditation, okay? For Leo rising, you're going to have Gemini energy on your 11th house. Gosh, I had to think about that for a second. 11th house of friends, groups, social interactions. This is our networking area and where we find like-minded people. So Leo rising, you're already very radiant, okay? So how fitting is it that when you're looking to friends, you may get along with Gemini people, because that fire and air together, they have affinity. They support each other. They both rise up. And so you're going to get the passion, and you're going to get the expansion, and you will really be able to feed off of each other's energy. And when you're not, it's just because the fire in you may be ready to act, whereas your Gemini influenced friends may slow you down with thinking things through. Virgo rising, you're going to have Gemini energy on your 10th house of career. This is the public self, your reputation, your responsibility, how you want to show up in the world. So for Virgo rising, that just means that you want to have some fluctuation with how you choose to show up in the world. You may want a career that allows you to show off different skills that you have gained, different aspects of yourself. Virgo is also ruled by Mercury, just like Gemini. So being a Virgo rising, your first house and your 10th house are connected, okay? And they are ruled by the same planet. So having that versatility of wanting to learn new things and being able to explore things mentally, and having a career or showing up in the world in a way that allows that mental stimulation, definitely going to be for you. Libra rising, you have, I was going to say Virgo. You have Gemini energy on your ninth house of spirituality. This is long distance or international traveling. This is philosophy and higher learning. And so for Libra risings, you may need that flexibility when it comes to your faiths and your beliefs. You may not stick to one particular faith or religion or any particular doctrine. You want to be able to switch from one thing to the next thing, and you need that room and that space for you to be able to take in more information and to learn new things and to share those ideas, and you don't want to feel restricted to do that. Scorpio rising, you're going to have Gemini energy on your eighth house of inheritance. This is our shared resources, our inner mind, and where we have traumas. So for a Scorpio rising, having Gemini on the eighth house, you may need flexibility in having access to others' resources. You are going to want that to be able to come and go, okay? Or when dealing with traumas or more private parts of your psyche, you're definitely kind of similar to what I mentioned with the Cancer rising, and having Cancer and Scorpio both be water signs. That's really interesting that some of the more darker houses are air houses for you guys. So you're going to need to be a little bit open-minded and have some agility in this area of your chart. For Sagittarius rising, you are the opposite sign to Gemini, so this automatically places Gemini energy on your seventh house of relationships, one-on-one conversations or one-on-one experiences, and where you are committed. So for Sagittarius rising, being the adventurous, bold energy that you are, you're going to want some flexibility in your relationships. You're going to want to be able to not necessarily commit. It doesn't mean that you can't commit, but you like the flexibility of being able to be you. And so being a Sagittarius rising, you're already going to be very passionate about yourself as an individual. So you're going to need a partner that's going to allow you that flexibility to be yourself and to have the adventures, whether they be literal or metaphorical. All right, Capricorn rising, you have Gemini energy on your sixth house of your duty. This is kind of where you find that you are altruistic, or where you have to give up your energy to serve others, your daily routine. This is the house of health. And so for Capricorn rising, you may feel as though you need a bit of flexibility for the type of work that you do. You're going to need a type of work that's going to be mentally stimulating for you, because you're already pretty ambitious. So having work that's going to keep you interested is going to work for you. You're going to want to be able to commit yourself in a way that is going to allow a flexible schedule, maybe flexible work schedule, or you're just going to want to be able to grow and expand and be ambitious in a way that doesn't feel constricted for you. Aquarius rising, you have Gemini on your fifth house. So Gemini energy here is going to make an Aquarius rising very fun and youthful and playful when it comes to self-expression. And it's easier for an Aquarius rising to express themselves, unless you have other mitigating factors, of course. But typically, it would be easy to express yourself because you have air on this house. So you have the space in the room to kind of, and the mutability to be ambivalent. And you can be very ambivalent with how you choose to express yourself. And your creativity is boundless. It's endless. Last, we have Pisces rising. Pisces rising, you're going to have this energy on the fourth house. So Gemini on the fourth. That puts Sagittarius on your 10th house. So in a more private area, a more private self, your upbringing, your ancestry and family, you may have grown up in a very flexible, detached sort of home where energy information is available. It's everywhere. You had access to a lot of things. home life may have felt a little bit scattered. And so, you know, by the time you're out in the world, you're looking for more direction and you're searching for more truths. So you want something to contain you, not really contain you, but you want a container for your beliefs and somewhere to direct all of the information that you have collected over time and that you're used to having access to, and you want somewhere to direct it so that it can actually be a little bit more useful to you. And you know, being Pisces, you already need a container because as water, you're uncontained, you know? So anyway, you guys, these are the areas of where you can find Gemini in your chart. I hope it resonates for you. So yeah, we've come to the end of the video, guys. That is it. I hope you enjoyed. Next week, we will be getting back into earth and water signs. And I'll let you guys know which ones they'll be. I can't think of which way. I wrote it down off the top of my head, but if you haven't watched at least the Sagittarius video, please do so. Again, my name is Jerica Brochet, and you know what's interesting, guys, before I get into that, it's so crazy how I'm doing the Gemini video, and I have felt a little scattered. So I really hope that this video does come out okay and that you can understand where I was coming from, because I do feel a little bit scattered right now. It's so crazy how that works. But anyway, you see how I'm jumping around? Oh my God. True harnessing Gemini energy, you guys. Okay, anyway, I'm Jerica Brochet. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am a spiritual maven, astrologer, a certified Usui Reiki master, and a certified integrative healing arts practitioner. And I want you guys to continue to get to know yourself energetically. So right now, at least at the time that you're watching this video, I am offering a 30 to 45 minute astrology reading, and it is a personality analysis. So if you would like me to help you to break down your chart a little bit and get to know yourself from an energetic standpoint and from a celestial standpoint, definitely check out the description box below. I will have some information down there for you. And please, please, please like, share, and subscribe and comment to this video if you resonated with it. Share it with your friends. Follow me on social medias. My Instagram handle is right there on the screen. It is at msjerib. That's it, you guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye.